Greetings, sir and sirettes, and welcome back to Terratech with me, Lathrix, and of course, welcome back to the campaign only very briefly, because today we are going to be building a true better future craft over in the sandbox mode. But before we do that, I want to see if we can actually get those items in the campaign at the moment. Currently, I can't purchase them from any of the stores, but that's because I've not unlocked any of them. So, let's just do a few missions and hopefully we'll see if we can indeed get them, or at very least, we can see their drop rate. Let's begin. Now thankfully this one's very, very easy for a jet, if I can aim at the right target. And there we go. That seemed a little bit unfair, got to be honest. And do we get any of the better future stuff? If not, I'll just go out and do a few more missions off camera. Few more missions off camera it is. After completing 7 missions, it turns out, no, either the Better Future blocks are incredibly rare or they do not drop in the campaign. Now, that is what I thought the case was anyway, but I was getting a few reports from people saying that they do indeed drop in the campaign, so apparently not just yet, it is just for the R&D mode, or they are so rare, it's just not worth it. So, the patch notes are correct, and let's go into the R&D mode. So what we are building today is something I was messing around with in the previous video. What we are doing is we are building a Better Future craft, which is a VTOL, but I want it to also function completely fine as a hovercraft. So I want it to be a hovercraft, and then we press shift to activate the thrusters, and then we turn into a regular plane. Now the problem is we can't use the hover glitch, so we can't use the regular propulsion, like the small ion drives, to turn us. The only thing we can use are the steering hovers, and the problem with that is that when you become airborne and the air mode takes effect, all of the steering hovers become normalized. They no longer register the front and the back of the craft, so you can no longer turn with them unless you only have them on one side of the craft. So the front of the craft is going to be very heavy with these fellows here, the hover flippers, and then the back is going to use the more regular hovers. That way we can control our flight once we're in the air, and then going forwards will be very easy. We just use the regular ion drives, which will also take us forwards as a hover. Thankfully those will work because shift will activate all of the propellers, or in this case the ion drives, all at the same time. In fact, that's why you can't use it while flying unless you use the hover glitch. So let's build a base for this craft and let's see how we can do. I want it to be not huge, but maybe 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, perhaps 6 tiles in terms of size. We'll find out. Definitely going to use the larger gyroscope with this, because once we're airborne, we need to be completely stable. So with the large gyroscope, that will give us a bit of a chance to build out and not just, well, build completely balanced, because that would be an absolute nightmare. Now, I just want to make sure this works, so what I'm going to do is just build backwards for a second, add the regular hovers at the back, add the thrusters, and just make sure we can indeed turn correctly mid-air with this sort of setup. Just making sure I said it's correct. So if I turn to the right, this one here is activating on its right, and then this one here is activating on its left, thus giving us a turn. If we go airborne, so now we're in air mode. If I turn to the right, yep, that's not working correctly. What's happening now is this one is active on the right, on the left, sorry, and this one is also active on the left, meaning that we don't get a proper turn. If this was completely balanced, we wouldn't be turning at all. In fact, we're turning inverted at the moment. Now back to normal. Now I try to turn to the left, and we are turning to the right, in fact, yep. Now we're turning to the left. So on the back, we can only use the regular hovers. At the front, we can use steering hovers and perhaps build some of these into the craft itself. Okay, excluding how high this centerpiece has got, I don't mind how that looks. What I might do is have this gap a little bit more pronounced, then have a weapon in the center which fires through it, then sort of reconvene on the way back. I'm not good at making choices. Okay, so change my mind, as you may imagine, because it is me. So what we're going to do is we're going to have this come down here and then slowly spike back up like this, kind of like an arch. then have the top come up. So we have all of the weapons and everything else sort of sitting on top here, and then the back hovers all the way back here. I'm going to have one more of these hovers a little bit higher, and hopefully that should turn out okay. I did try out having the center open quite a few times, different ways, and I just don't think it looks very good. I think having a more solid structure looks better with these type of blocks. Okay, other than that though, I'm slowly starting to see how this is going to look. Slowly. Yeah, I'm okay with that. Let's see if this thing turns okay in the air. Beginning turning now towards the right. Yep, that's fine. It does sort of float in that direction for a while afterwards, but turning's fine. Obviously need a lot more fuel than this, but still, okay. The main goal of this is to have the hover be able to stay in the air indefinitely, which will be very difficult only using thrusters to get our height, but most importantly, it needs to be able to act like a normal hover, which I think will be the easy part. Now, I really, really love this corporation. I love how the things look, I love how things function, but one thing I would really like is a few more harsh edges. Now, I fully understand the corporation is all about looking sleek, it's got a lot of smooth edges, lots of curvy stuff, it's all about being nice and sleek looking. But just a couple, because at the moment, every time I try and do this bottom section, it ends up sort of looking like a teardrop, and I don't really want that. It's the one section of this whole craft I want to be a little bit more harsh looking, but it's not really going to work out, and sadly, Hawkeye stuff doesn't quite mix. The difference in texture just looks really, really obvious, and I don't like that. Okay, the fuel pods in there, I actually really, really like. So at the moment, it is a little bit chunkier than I originally thought it was going to be, so I'm not sure if I want to make this a little bit smaller, or do I just keep it the same? I think if I keep it the same, we are going to need to make the back sort of flare out a little bit to make it look, honestly, a little bit like a Halo Wraith at this point. I don't know. Well, at least that's how it looks in my head and how it's going to turn out. We'll see. We will see. Now that is lovely. That is really, really easy to control. I would say that's a functional flyer. Absolutely fine. Now, what's going to happen when it runs out of fuel? What I'm hoping is that it slowly descends, or it stays at almost the same altitude, or it slightly goes up. What I don't want is just utter collapse straight towards the ground. So it seems like when the fuel's out, we're going to very rockily head towards the ground. Now, if I up how much fuel we have, we can make that slower and slower and slower. And then back into hover mode. And then we just continue as if we were a hover the whole time. Oh, I'm really happy with this so far. Really, really happy. Okay, fuel is gone. And we are actually gaining altitude. So, now, we can stay in the air forever. I'm actually okay with that. Yeah, I don't mind that, because we weren't gaining altitude too fast. I will need to rebalance it a little bit, but I'll wait until I've completed the back section first, because right now we have no idea how heavy this thing's going to be. We can hardly move just using the steering hovers. Ow. Similar to the last time I was building, it turns out, with Better Future, or at least with the new hovers, when you're moving forwards, you go slowly towards the ground, and you get very close to it, and because of this, if I activate my thrusters now, I don't become airborne, but instead, we have some control as to how high up I am from the ground. So when I'm traversing very, very difficult terrain, and then everything's easier, and then back to normal. That's interesting. Now, the good thing with mortars is that you don't necessarily have to be staying still for them to work out just fine. Unlike a lot of regular weapons in this game, slight movements will get their aim really messed up, but I don't want to go with missiles again, which obviously ignore that completely. Mortars are sort of in between. Although they are affected by your movement in terms of the speed of the projectile and how it's moving when you fire it, they do also home in once they're in the air, meaning, as long as you're within range, and the target isn't too fast, you should get a hit. And I don't use mortars enough anymore, so, okay, going with mortars. The problem is, these things are so much heavier than I originally thought they were. They are incredibly heavy. So what I think I'm going to do is have a spine of them instead, because otherwise we are going to need so much hover force on the back, and I really don't want that. Yeah, I think it'll look better as well. If I have a spine of them, it means I can then bulk up the sides a little bit. This is not going to be anywhere near as thin as I originally thought it was going to be. I just don't build elegantly. It's not in my style. That does not look bad at all. Having them semi-embedded into the craft actually looks really nice. So the question is, how many are we going to use? I really think this is more of a transport vessel than it is going to be a combat vessel. For a start, I'm not adding shields to this, because I do not like how shields look with this type of craft. So, yeah, I think 2, maybe 1 more? So maybe 3 is enough? Not too sure. Yeah, maybe 2 or 3, and then we can add some light weaponry. Things like the needle laser and stuff like that. The end shape is finally starting to come together. So, I originally had this way further out to make this look, well, completely tanky, but I really did not like the look. The only sections I'm not sure about is how I'm going to do underneath here, and honestly, just this. Once again, I would normally build quite sharply here, so I'm not sure how exactly I'm going to do this. Maybe I'll have this a little bit smaller, then flare off to the side like this, then have that cover these hovers. Make this a more complete section, but definitely need to work around a few things. We're getting there, though. We're definitely getting there. That is far more vertical now, which is nice. That rocking is not nice, however, and I clearly need to balance that a little bit better. But ignoring the rocking, yep, still its old self, still able to get to quite a high altitude before finally running out of fuel. I'm assuming it can still fly forever. Ooh, wow, yeah, this needs to be balanced way better. Oh, it's because we have too much... Yeah, okay, yeah, we have way too much lift on the back, nowhere near enough on the front. It's causing all of this. Also, no, we are now officially going down, and I've added all the extra weight. Who would have thought? More weight needs more propulsion to fly. Truly, we live in a curious age. Looking better. A lot more simple as well, which I think is going to just make it all look, I don't know, more tied together, I suppose. The problem is still, the weight distribution is so off, even with 2 gyroscopes, this is the end result. I ended up messing around with the thrust, ended up messing around with everything else, but right now in its current form, it's A, just too heavy, and B, the weight is definitely far too much on the front, but there's not much more I can really do. But I can't accept this, I just cannot accept this type of flight. It's fully functional, it's just really not fun to use. Yep, the weight has now been mostly balanced, so it's only got a very slight rock to it. And I've also changed the propulsion heavily, so now that doesn't cause as much of an issue either. It's still going to rock, but it's going to rock far, far less. And we can work on this more as we finish the thing off. Yeah, this is fine. That's more than acceptable. Well, it's acceptable, so... It's not more than acceptable. It is acceptable. I can do the words. definitely good for getting out of combat. Oh, I think I might be moving just too fast there. Okay. So the mortars do have limitations. I can't fire it at full speed. But if I'm sliding like this, it should still be no issue. If I was far enough away, at least. Need to get used to these mortars. Now, originally, I was going to go back to this and add more stuff to the top, but honestly, I just like it as it is. One thing we could possibly do... Ah, no, we can't because of this block here. I was thinking perhaps what we could do is have a sort of chessboard style on the top. I think that would look quite nice, but the problem is this. Yep, that would end up being odd otherwise, which would be weird. Unless we just go with that. Yeah, that's okay, but then this looks too bland. But I would like that on the top, just to make it look a bit more decorative. If we're going to have just a flat surface there, maybe going with that might be nice. It adds a bit more, I don't know, complexity to it, makes it look a bit more stylized, a bit more used. Not too sure. No, yeah, I definitely do like that. Breaks everything up a little bit, which... Or do I? I actually don't know if I like that or not. At this point, I think I'm actually going to say I'm done. I am really happy with how this works. It handles incredibly well when it's in hover mode. We have variable altitude, which is going to be really, really useful. And it can fly forever, and it is definitely a VTOL. It can take off vertically, completely vertically, if you're pressing backwards, even slightly. The rocking has gone down substantially, the speed isn't bad, and it actually handles in the air better than it handles as a hover. I would say this is my ultimate transport craft. Definitely not a combat craft. You could easily remove these mortars and just keep it for the sake of getting around, but I do like to have at least some basic combat capabilities. Still unsure about the checkerboard pattern, the chess pattern, but I like it enough. I like it enough. So, I hope you've enjoyed the video. I'm going to be calling it here and waiting until more stuff is released, most likely for the Better Future Corporation, though I am tempted to make a more serious combat craft, honestly, so I don't know. What would you like to see? I'm very tempted to build a proper combat hover, because I never build those. When I build hovers, I always build them around the fact, oh look, it's a hover, we can simply use, okay, let's land this correctly, we can simply use, rockets and such, and then move around really fast. What about a piece of artillery? What about cannons, all that stuff? What would you like to see? Because I'm very tempted. Really happy with how this turned out. May come back to it in the future. Thank you so much for watching. If you have enjoyed the video, then of course, likes, favourite, shares, comments, all that good stuff helps out me, helps out the channel, and most importantly, shows that Terratech, is a series you wish to see continued in the future. Thank you so much for watching, and goodbye. Now I need to fix this up.